Welcome to the Do It All Dad Year podcast, what Gen X dads understand. Dad friendly entertainment for you and me. And this is Shell Shocked Snappy. Wine coolers, jello shots, and reluctant repeat sips from your first can of Budweiser help melt teen shyness away. But pet snapping turtles aren't ninth graders in junior high who haven't gotten into the puberty party yet either. At this point, Matilda, a 12-year-old entrepreneur and inventor of a suction sticking party ball strobe light machine called Party Magic, was willing to blow some of her Kickstarter startup money on a past life regression consultation with an animal communicator at a nearby crystal shop in Ridgefield, Connecticut, to get her new pet snapping turtle Snappy to come out of his shell already, because changing his name from Waxy to Snappy wasn't getting the job done. More than anything, Matilda went into boogie board in Australia, her mama's home country, along Mother's Beach, 30 minutes north of Melbourne, for her parents' 10-year wedding anniversary. Yet she didn't feel safe in those jellyfish-infested waters without a trustworthy snapping turtle to ward off attacks by her side, knowing their preference for scarfing up electric purple haze stingers. Jimi Hendrix lives. Holla! Thank you very much! The 70-something, bushy-haired, frumpy, shoal-strangled, Sedona's son wrinkled transplant, animal communicator talks with toads, lounged out in her cubby-sized room office within a crystal shop in nearby Ridgefield, Connecticut, and takes off her bifocal glasses to examine Snappy the turtle more closely, whom Matilda reveals hiding in her old beat-up backpack, knowing his tendency to fart uncontrollably, especially on strangers, which she considered a reason for why Snappy the turtle's head was hidden perpetual shame so often. Talks with Toad says, Matilda, over the phone you said Snappy won't come out of his shell around strangers. Matilda says, I've offered him lobster rolls from Stu Leonard's, Smoked Nova from Russ and Daughters, bought him the Tony Robbins audiobook box set, which wasn't cheap either. So I'm running out of options here. Our first Corn Booth family vacation to Australia is tomorrow, and I don't know what to do because Snappy is my second line of defense against all those jellyfish in Australia after the jellyfish nets, which aren't even available in the beaches in Bondi, and that's where all the serious boogie board action happens anyway. My parents went to get married in Australia, where my mom is from originally, yet my grandma, otherwise known as Mimi, shot it down immediately. At the time, she calls up my daddy and says, Australia is a long trip from New York, son, and your dad doesn't love you that much. Then my dad made a compromise with my mom and says, assuming we have a boy one day, instead of hiring a rabbi for the kid's circumcision, we'll hire Crocodile Dundee, just so we could hear a room full of Jews say, now that's a knife, you could chop it all off with that thing. What Gen X dads understand. Holla. Thank you very much. Talks with Toads, spits out a deep, weighty laugh, opening up her throat chakra more than any downward dog pose ever could, and says, does Snappy ever come out of his shell around your daddy? Or does he get intimidated by larger-than-life comedians too? I saw his performance at the Montreal Comedy Festival on YouTube and coughed up along in the process. He made such a strong funny man impression the last time your family dropped by the Crystal Shop. And I don't care for most stand-up comedy these days, plus how creepy is the comic Anthony Jeselnik, knowing that he considers psychic surveys on how many missing children they've seen through their tarot cards as today as being the height of God-loving hilarity. Matilda says, in Anthony Jeselnik's defense, God commands his chosen people to forsake the counsel of psychics in Deuteronomy. But my dad told me it was kosher to make an exception in Snappy the Turtle's defense. Talks with Toads does her best to shrug off a smart-ass Jewess rubbing God's law in her face with such effortless fluency, and decides to plow forward with her past life regression reading for Snappy the Turtle, so she can get back to watching some bestiality, horse on man, porn on her lunch break, which now can't come soon enough. Talks with Toads grabs a sapphire crystal from a cramped, unorganized drawer representing the entire kitchen sink of healing, past life reading gemstones known to mankind, and places it on Snappy the Turtle's shell. Talks with Toad says, I see a deadhead at Giant Stadium in a soup truck RV called Terrapin Soup, blowing high-grade $75 an eighth weed into Snappy the Turtle's face again and again. as the live version of Scarlet Begonias from Cornell 77 blasting the tape deck in the background. I stopped going to shows after I stopped smoking weed myself. Matilda says, after my second birthday, my dad took me to a Dead show in Bethel Woods in upstate New York. I pointed at a dinged up looking deadhead sucking down a nitrous balloon and said, Daddy, birthday? And my daddy says, no, burnout day. Holla! Thank you very much! Talks with Toads unleashes another full throaty laugh again and says, wait a minute, no, he can't be. Matilda's interest in Talks with Toads past life regression reading has reached peak interest and says, what do you see now? Is the deadhead owner feeding Snappy the turtle's head with a sheet of acid, or what? Talks with Toads takes a deep breath, doing her best to conceal her startled state as she pulls back her long, tangly gray hair and utters in a whispery, barely audible tone, the deadhead owner is serving Snappy the turtle's family for dinner. Matilda jumps out of her chair in a bewildered state of disgust and yells, I thought deadheads ate grilled cheese sandwiches after dead shows when they got the munchies. Talks with Toad says, munchies don't happen when you're on 4 tabs of acid, dear. Hold on. I see a line of deadheads around the parking lot in Giant Stadium waiting for this terrapin turtle soup truck to serve more bowls of turtle soup to cure more endless bad trips on Herculean amounts of acid. The merry pranksters used to spike garbage cans full of fruit punch with acid during 3-hour dead jam sessions in the streets back in the day before you tripped over shit throughout the cable car line streets of San Francisco. Eventually, the college dropout hippies, who weren't banking on replacing Santana anytime soon, became howling, starved lunatics, left with no other choice but to eat stray cats behind the dumpster at Mushu York's. Soon after, a famed chef from New Orleans, Gumbo Greg, who went on to become the executive chef at the Philly Club for years before opening his own restaurant in North Beach, Chowder Panisse gave Jerry Garcia the idea of serving one of his freaked-out tripping groupies some turtle soup in their house on Haight-Ashbury to cure her bad trip after doing the same for Dr. John during Jazz Fest once after he crawled himself up into a ball on stage thinking he turned into a psychedelic night-tripping crawfish. Crawfish, shrimp with more personality. Similar to John Mayer, teaming up with the Grateful Dead and Company, injecting Scruffy Smooth with a dose of much-needed personality through sheer osmosis. Snappy the Turtle, finally, snaps out of his shell and yells, thanks for the flashback, bitch. And I'll talk to you guys soon.